This is really the problem. So why do these people say that? Because quite literally, Congress in the last 20 years has passed legislation to allow industry to poison you with their permission. That's the reality. The only hope that you have is to stop buying that nonsense and try and vote for responsible people. But given the amount of money that's involved in political campaigns, I don't think we can compete easily on the money side. That's going to be really, really tough for us. The money that you can compete with is what comes out of your wallet and what you buy with it. And unfortunately, the quote-unquote organic crops are generally 3 to 5 times more expensive. What foods are most affected? Tomatoes, beef, potatoes. Well, let's see, in some families, that's number 1, 2, and 3 foods: ketchup, French fries, and hamburger patties. Oranges, lettuce, apples, peaches, pork, wheat, soybeans, beans, carrots, chicken, corn, and grapes. Probably just about everything that kids with autism consume on a regular basis, right? Antibiotic sales for meat and poultry hit a record high. So unless you're getting antibiotic-free food, you're giving your kid antibiotics every day. And what do you suppose the consequences is for the microbiome, that gut ecosystem? Not good. Voluntary GMO labeling, just trust us. So Congress a few years ago, and the president, our current president, signed it into law, allows industry to regulate whether or not they tell you the food is GMO or not. It's voluntary. They don't have to disclose it to you. All natural products. Oh my gosh. Some of you are actually under the unfortunate impression that the term natural actually means something. It should, right? Natural should mean something, right? It should have a definition. When in fact it's purely a marketing gimmick. And I believe me, this is just crap. And the red flag should go off when you see all natural, because they're hiding something from you. The Food and Drug Administration has no clear definition of natural when applied to food products. The main rule is it doesn't object to its use. And I'm not really picking on Minute Maid, which is owned by Coke, which is where I live, probably one of the major employers in my hometown of Atlanta. But this is their new, it looks really warm and fuzzy. So they're going after you parents, and they're trying to help you to feel good about what you're doing. You're giving them their all-natural products. So you should be happy. You're a good parent for doing that, right? So this is one of their new items that they're really pushing. It's called Cherry Limeade. So it has... the number 1 ingredient is water. The number 2 ingredient is high fructose corn syrup. On the entire, natural flavors, by the way, which is what? What is natural flavors? MSG or something like MSG, right? It's a code word for a flavor enhancing agent that they add in. Natural flavors doesn't mean cherry extract. It doesn't mean blueberry extract. It's actually a code word for some form of flavor enhancing agent. Cystoic acid, glutamate, something like that. All natural. And how many vitamins are there? None. It gives you 34 grams of carbohydrates, and that's it. Nothing else. No vitamins, no vitamin C, no vitamin A, nothing except 34 grams of carbohydrate. There's the all-natural high fructose corn syrup sitting on the railway side before it goes from Archer Daniels out to some beverage manufacturer. Harry Truman said, if you can't convince them, confuse them. So that's a good way to work. So Got Milk, this is a great ad, lots of great people. Superman, Taylor Swift, they're about the same person now. So maybe she's Superwoman. And then the Got Autism campaign that came out from milk. But one of the things that most people don't recognize about milk is how it's homogenized. So how do you get a fat to stay in solution? Fats don't want to be in water. You have to send it through this compressor at very high pressure and get the protein molecules to embed into fat globules. So now you have protein, which needs to be digested by enzymes that can break down amino acid bonds, embedded in a fat. Do you think you can digest that? You're going to absorb the fat globule with some residues of protein in it that's going to have alterations on your immune system, very clearly. So homogenization is of the devil, okay? Just It should never be allowed. It's a convenience factor, so you don't have to shake up the bottle. That's it. So is milk all bad? Well, the original protein in milk, the casein protein, was actually an A2, but a mutation took place that was A1, and farmers said, hey, these cows make more milk. This is before they studied genes. So if you're a dairy farmer and you have a cow that has a little bit of a variation and it makes more milk, what are you going to do? You're going to breed those cows. So now there is this goal to try and get A2 milk back into the market, but if you homogenize it, you're still not getting the benefits of that whole effect. So A2 is very digestible, A1 is not. If you're going to make your Bravo probiotic, try and get an A2 milk. And I'm really opposed to homogenization. Sulfation deficits in low-functioning kids with autism. This comes from Rosemary Waring, but Dick talks about this. Dick Deeth, Jill James talks about it. We all know about this. They don't detox well. So the environmental intoxicants that are coming in can't be sulfated, which is one of the natural ways that we detoxify ourselves. This is the pathway. I don't want to have to go through all of that in the limited time that I have. There's lots of other lectures about this, but if you're not familiar with the methylation, folic acid, cysteine, glutathione, methionine pathway, you need to, because it's an important part of what happens with your children. Lyme disease, lots of studies have attempted to verify other observations for Lyme disease. It remains controversial. This is a study that says there's no association with Lyme disease. I do have some kids with honest-to-goodness Lyme disease in my practice. I don't think it's a primary cause of autism. I'll probably get a lot of flack for that from people who are very much into that. But Lyme disease is prevalent, but it's always been prevalent. Maybe it's mutated some, maybe it's a different disease. Whether or not it's part of the autism epidemic or just a small niche of autism, I don't know. Iodine deficiency in Egyptian children. So iodine is something that's really easy to be deficient on because it's not obvious except through very subtle testing. So iodine needs to be supplemented in most children at about 100 to 200 micrograms per day minimum, and then upwards based on assessments of their thyroid levels. Autism and intellectual disabilities associated with mitochondrial disease. So a lot of you feel like you're there, but I'm telling you, mitochondrial dysfunction in autism, which Rosalind and I talked about back in 2008, is real, but it's a consequence. It's not a primary cause. Something else is poisoning the mitochondrial energy systems, and you have to get that out of there. And just going on a mito cocktail isn't going to do it for most of these kids. Autism spectrum disorder and low vitamin D levels, a sibling cohort study. The American Academy of Pediatrics journal, Pediatrics, came out and finally said, hey, you know what? You give vitamin D to kids with autism, they get better. Thank God, finally. A little bit of ray of sunshine there. They don't go into a lot of detail on why, but it works for most kids. You can't be vitamin D deficient and function normally. Vitamin D status in autism spectrum disorders. This is another one showing that most of the kids, 80% of them were deficient and needed supplementation. I love this one. The scientist says, I want to know who put the lime in the coconut. Another unauthorized experiment of genetically modified food. Amen. Comparison of temporal trends in United States autism prevalence and suspected environmental factors. We have Stephanie Seneff here. I don't have to give this lecture, so I'll let her do that. Monsanto earnings fall. Yay, 34% as farmers reject GMO crops. Big news. Sperm chromatin alteration and DNA damage by all kinds of bad pesticides that you have in your garage, more than likely. You're afraid of those cockroaches and those bugs. Either you have someone come out to your home and treat it. Please think about all that stuff and how you use it. It does affect the human sperm and eggs. Mitochondrial dysfunction and organophosphorus compounds. So these are pesticides, again, interrupting the mitochondrial function. The autism bomb. Bayer was kind of intimidated by Monsanto's success with Roundup, glyphosate, so they came up with their own product called Liberty. Nice. Liberty is what's behind this study. Pre- and postnatal exposure to low doses of glufosinate, ammonium induces autism-like phenotypes in mice. And I bet it's doing something similar to your kids. You know, rodents are pretty tough. You know, they probably are tougher than we are. Think about where they live and how they eat and how they survive in that environment. They're probably pretty tough. And it isn't just Monsanto, but eating organic is like giving Monsanto the finger. I left the name in there because it's such a cute cartoon. I had to leave it out there. Gene expression profiles in rat central nervous system. This is a military study induced by JP8 jet fuel vapor exposure. And combusting it doesn't make it go away. Even jet fuel, wow. So helminthic therapy or elimination, who knows? So there's lectures that have been given in this conference about giving helminths, and there'll be lectures about getting rid of worms in this conference as well. So are you confused? The possible use of pig whipworm ova in autism spectrum disorders. This came from Nicola and Dario. So that he falls on the favor of giving bugs, giving worms. There's some good reasons immunologically to think about that. And within the biome. So this comes from William Parker at Duke, who said, the anthropology of the human species argues for helminths being part of mom and child's ecosystem, that we grew up on planet Earth with worms, our immune systems are designed to deal with worms and to function with worms, and maybe it's the lack of worms that are causing all these immunological disorders. And that's Duke. Danger zone. Dietrich's been trying to get me to listen to him for years about the effects of EMF and how we need to live in a Faraday cage, which is not a bad idea. It's just really hard to do. He talks about various distances to various electronic fields and what they might actually be harmful with. This recently came out, two emerging topics regarding long-range physical signaling within the nervous system, nanotubes and electromagnetic fields. These things are they create their own electrical field, and they're very sensitive to influences from other electrical fields. Human intracranial high frequency activated during memory cycles. This is 50 to 60 cycle per second gamma frequencies. This is Dick Deeth's specialty. Dick talks about gamma frequencies a lot. It's a critical part of memory. You bump up huge amounts of energy. To oscillate your brain at 50 cycles per second is using huge amounts of glucose and oxygen. It's very demanding to remember everything that I just told you, right? It's a lot of oxygen and glucose that's got to go in to do that. So we live in an electromagnetic spectrum of exposure. It goes through walls, it goes through buildings. You have Wi-Fi in your house more than likely. If you don't have Wi-Fi there, you're going to have it at Starbucks, you're going to have it at work, you're going to have it somewhere. You're going to get exposed to a lot of this stuff. There's microphone towers all over your neighborhood. We all have, how many of you have a cell phone in your pocket or your purse? Yeah, we all have it, okay? It's all an emitter. Autism-relevant social abnormalities in mice exposed prenatally to extremely low-frequency electromagnetic fields. These are two articles, 1 and 2, from Martha Herbert talking about autism and EMF. You've got to be a fairly long distance away from really strong EMF, but even household appliances like hair dryers and blenders, if you're really close to that, if you let the kid kind of be there at the blender as the blender is going around, pretty high exposure to EMF. Now, that doesn't mean that causes autism, but it's at least concerning. Cell phone radiation, electromagnetic frequencies, so don't let your kids stick the cell phone in their ear. How many of you have a kid that likes to walk around with the iPhone stuck right here? Yeah, they do that, don't they? Not a good idea. You can see how much higher penetration into the brain of the influence of the EMF from the phone. Okay, The Last Mimsy. How many of you have seen The Last Mimsy? It's one of my favorite movies, okay? So a couple of you weirdos that have seen The Last Mimsy and like it like I do, okay? God bless you. But this is a kind of an interesting movie because it's about a hypothesis that is very stingy close to reality. The human species in the future is so genetically broken, they can't repair themselves anymore. They have to go back in time, and in this movie they go to 2004, I believe, which maybe isn't quite far enough back, to get some good DNA to then bring forward through the time portal in this little Mimsy doll back to help repair them. But how much more broken are you going to let your DNA and the next generation's DNA get before you start to do something about this? So I'm going to introduce the Bradstreet Essence Protocol. So you remember Essence? It's like that whole collection of things. I'm not going to give it to you today. I'm going to tease you today.